An alarming new report from the Anti-Defamation League reveals New York led the nation for the most anti-Semitic incidents across the country in 2022, 580. That's up 39% from the year before. That number has also more than doubled in the last decade.
We have at least 20 victims.
10:59 a.m. First reports of shots fired. 300 police officers scrambling to the scene began arriving within 4 minutes.
It was unspeakable, the carnage that we were seeing, the number of people who were injured and unfortunately already dead.
That just around 12:20 p.m. Tuesday, two suspects parked right outside the market, slowly emerging from a stolen U-Haul van, armed with high-profile rifles.
Another nasty and brutal anti-Semitic attack, this time in Central Park. And as cops tonight look for the suspect, Eyewitness News reporter Josh Einiger is talking with Jews worried about what could be next.
It happened just after dark in Central Park. A 63-year-old man minding his own business became the victim of a vile hate crime earlier this month.
After surviving more than 11 hours on Saturday, held at gunpoint in his Texas synagogue, Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker spoke today with CBS Mornings.
It was terrifying. It was overwhelming.
Sharing for the first time how he and other hostages escaped.
I threw a chair at the gunman, and I headed for the door. And all three of us were able to get out without even a shot being fired.
The FBI.
Welcome. I'm Paul Viollis, and this is Fact-Based News. What you just saw speaks volumes to where we are as a country. But there's one word that underscores everything that you just saw on your screen, and it's hate. How much hate permeates throughout our country in so many different ways. What we're going to talk about today, by far, the worst attack of the Jewish American community on American soil in the history of this country, occurred in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And we're going to talk about that today in depth. We're going to talk about anti-Semitism, a subject that a number of people have told me prior to doing this episode may not be well received. Does it look like I care? Absolutely not. Because it's a story that needs to be told. There are facts that need to be put on the table. And we, as a national community, must talk about how frequently this happens. But more importantly, what we need to do about it. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to break this down, though. And in typical format of the show, we're going to break this down by our facts. And how we're going to do that is we're going to start out by defining what a hate crime is. We're going to define what a hate group is. And then we're going to define what anti-Semitism is. We're going to lay this out when I speak to you about anti-Semitism by terms of empirical data. So up on your screen, you're going to see solid statistical analysis that will go back to 1999 to the present, as far as the frequency of it and the location of it, and the number of people and the number of lives and souls that have been impacted by it. And that will lay out the groundwork for what we're going to do from there is then get into this particular incident. But ladies and gentlemen, the worst part about this whole thing is the foreseeability of what happened at the Tree of Life. That's right, the word foreseeability. Now, I know that some people are going to step back from that a little bit, and that's fine. Stay with me on this. Stay with me on this one. Because it's imperative that we understand by the facts how many people knew about this shooter. How many people knew about Bowers going back to the first grade? We're going to talk about his employment history. We're going to talk about interviews that were taken and recorded from his neighbors and people that knew him. We're going to talk about his medical history, his mental health and mental illness history, proven history, the hate that he spewed on social media, the foreseeability of this man's actions, and how many people knew, and how many people did nothing. That's right. Now, you may also hear this big question mark that's been kind of circulating around the country about why didn't law enforcement do anything? Well, we're going to talk about that too. And the reason why we're going to talk about it is because so much of that sits outside of law enforcement. and sits with the people that I'm going to break this down with. And I'm going to be joined by a colleague, a 24-year veteran of the FBI, retired Supervisory Special Agent. Shawn Brooks is going to join us today, and she's going to break this down. Was at the scene, a crisis management specialist, and someone that is extremely involved in the Jewish American community in the city of Pittsburgh, but also in the United States. She's going to break this down for us. No better person to join us than Shawn. And by the end of the show, the most important thing that I beseech you that you take from this today is how much we absolutely can do to fight this hate, specifically focused at the Jewish community. That's right. How much we can do by merely getting involved in the things that we're going to talk about. That being said, let's jump into this, okay? First thing, hate crime. What is a hate crime? A crime motivation, and you're going to see this up on your screen right now, all right? Motivation for committing the crime based on bias equals a hate crime. See it up on your screen. A hate group. An organization whose goals and activities are primarily or substantially based on a shared antipathy towards people of one or more of different races, religions, ethnicities, nationalities, national origins, genders, or sexual identities. Point in here, bigoted members are not enough. This hate group has to be solely hate-based orientation. It's a hate group. Anti-Semitism means prejudice against or hatred of Jews. These are the definitions we go by. That's our benchmark. So with that, let's look at some empirical data. From January 1st, 2023 to April 1st, 2023, 713 hate incidents were reported in the United States. The key part there is not the 713. It's were reported. Of the 713, 444 were identified as anti-Semitic. Think about that. Numbers aren't lying. 3,697 anti-Semitic incidents occurred in the United States in 2022. Again, that number, 3,697. Think about that. Highest in the history of our country. We're going in the wrong direction. A total of 1,590 incidents were reported in 2021 relating to religion. Anti-Jewish made 51.4%. No question. To clarify, we look at hate crimes by category, by race. Clearly, the race that has the preponderance, without any question, has the majority of hate pointed towards it is the black community. No question. But today we're talking about religion. And in this show, in this episode, at this moment in time, when we talk about religion, it is the Jewish community that is the primary focus of hate in this country, without question. 9 shootings carried out from 1999 to present against the Jewish community. 9 mass shootings. And I'll leave you with this part. 6 categories of hate groups in the United States. 6 categories. The first category is general hate. It's 274 groups. And believe it or not, general hate. They just hate everybody. And the second group, anti-Semitism groups, make up 248. Now think about that. Think about those numbers. We've seen from 99, the Jewish Community Center in Los Angeles in 2006, and you can see this up on your screen. The Jewish Federation in Seattle, 2009. The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in D.C., and I can go on and on. Certainly today we're talking about what happened in 2018 at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The last recorded one, 2021, the Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, I can go on and on. You see it on your screen. You can find it at factbasednews.com's library because it's going to be there. So clearly we have that problem. Discernibly, we have that problem. So what do we really do about it? We examine what we can do about it in terms of foreseeability and preemptive risk mitigation. How do we do that? Well, clearly having Shawn on is going to help us a great deal with that. Being a crisis management expert, again, former supervisory special agent, 24 years with the FBI, we can do that, and we're doing that. So we got the best. She's going to be here in a minute. Stay with me on this because I want to tee her up before she gets here. I want to tell you a little bit about Robert Bowers. Now, you say foreseeability. Let's talk foreseeability. Let's put our cards on the table. Robert Bowers. Okay, where do we start? Well, let's go back to the first grade. Now, I want to, before I even get here, I want to cite something I've mentioned before in other episodes. I want to say this right now. Our senior producer and investigative reporter, Emily, has done a fabulous job on the show so far, as our entire crew has. But she's outdone herself on this case because she has pulled more information from a criminal side and a mental health side and a social side and neighborhood side that any other news outlet I saw has put together. She has done a phenomenal job, so credit to her, because this information is critical. Bowers goes back to foreseeability stage, goes back to the first grade. Right. So look at this up on your screen, and I'm going to highlight a couple of things for you. He was referred to as a school psychologist for counseling back in the first grade. In the fourth grade, his teacher brought his behavior to the attention of his mother as bizarre. The mother, obviously having problems, didn't want to pay attention to it. He's referred to a Dr. Dr. Brink at the McKeesport chief psychiatrist, who recommended that Bowers be evaluated, including for possible schizophrenia. This is back then. Bowers was 16. He threatened to shoot himself and was involuntarily committed to St. John's Hospital. Bowers was 17. He attempted suicide, was severely burned, and was hospitalized at Mercy Hospital. After Bowers was treated at Mercy Hospital for his burns, he was transferred to St. Francis Hospital for psychiatric care. In 2004, at age 32, Bowers was voluntarily committed to a psychiatric unit at St. Clair Hospital. At age 32, Bowers sought disability, reporting tremendous depression, social anxieties, and that he very infrequently left his home, setting the stage for someone with far beyond acute mental illness and violent tendencies, well documented in the medical community, to the extent that it starts out his visits to psychiatric wards: McKeesport Hospital Psychiatric Ward at 13, Southwood Psychiatric Hospital at 13, Bradley Center at 13, St. John's Hospital at 16, Braddock Hospital at 16, Mercy Hospital at 17, St. Francis Hospital at 17, St. Clair Hospital at 32. Why am I saying all of those? Because it spells one word, ladies and gentlemen: foreseeable. That's right. It spells foreseeable. Robert Bowers' own defense attorney described him as psychotic, delusional, and displaying paranoid symptoms. His own defense attorney described him as that. Bowers' parents both used to make claims. Now listen to this. If you're a parent, and I'm not throwing this card in like Bowers should get an excuse because he had bad parents. He had miserable parents. It's no excuse. His parents both used to make claims of wanting their son to die as an infant. Okay. Bowers' mother indicated that her son used to watch her have sex with people in their one-bedroom apartment. This is how he's raised, and then this is how he's seen by neighbors. His neighbor says, and I'm quoting Chris Hall, who lives in the same Pittsburgh apartment, or did live in the same Pittsburgh apartment as Bowers. He was always by himself, and he never opened the blinds. Now, let's ask you, you're in your neighborhood. You know someone who's shut in, who shows these types of tendencies. Does that raise a red flag? I would think. But now let's switch gears again, and let's deepen the foreseeability circle, and let's go to social media. Now, I mentioned social media because I think it's imperative that we lay out something that we've talked about in other episodes, and I'm going to say it again, and probably to ad nauseum, and it is what it is. We have to make a conscious decision as to whether or not we are going to allow law enforcement to patrol the depths of social media or not. If you don't want to, if you want what you feel is your alleged perceived right to privacy, that's okay. I'm not judging. Just don't complain if this happens to you. Don't look and point the finger at law enforcement if this happens to you from someone like this that spews this hate. Hate on a site called Gab. So I didn't know what that was, which obviously there's a long list of stuff I don't know. So I had to ask, and it's a social network that champions free speech, individual liberty, and the free flow of information online. All are welcome. Yeah, great. I'm not a fan already. So what it says, and this is his cover sheet on this, it says, Jews are the children of Satan. This isn't a red flag. This is a neon flag. He makes statement after statement after statement in social media. You will see this on your screen. It'll be in our library. I'm not going to spend way too much time on this. But he goes on and on making statements, for example, like HIAS, which is the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, likes to bring invaders in that kill our people. I can't sit by and watch my people get slaughtered. Screw your optics, I'm going in. 2 hours before the event, that's what's on social media. That's on the site that says we promote free speech and individual liberty, free flow of information. Ask yourself. Switch gears now and ask yourself if you're one of the family members of the people that were executed by this guy. How much of this social media do you wish was reported? I mean, I look at stuff where he denies the Holocaust, talks nothing about conspiracy theories about Jews destroying the planet. This is a guy that spewed hate for the longest time on social media and said what he wanted to do. And he said it in public. We did nothing. At the scene, he told one officer, I just want to kill Jews. Jewish people needed to die. How much more do we need to know before we do something? Now, we are so very fortunate to have Shawn Brooks with us. Shawn is a retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent. As I mentioned, she's currently the Director of Community Security at the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, 24-year veteran to our country. Shawn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul.
Shawn, I want to dive right into this and really, our audience needs the benefit of your expertise in this. This is obviously a passionate subject. It's one that it's so difficult to express because 43 years of government service for me, it's really difficult to express when you start talking about people that are fueled with hate and the fact that they broadcast it. So with that, let me open with this question, Shawn. As one of the first responders at the Tree of Life, as best as you can, describe the scene.
So let me start with this. I don't want to take anything away from the actual first responders. That was law enforcement, Pittsburgh police, SWAT. They were our heroes. They were the first responders. I came on scene within about 45 minutes after getting repeated calls and texts that this was happening. And my role was not in a tactical capacity, but as what's called a crisis management coordinator. So getting to the scene, being a representative for the FBI, and determining pretty early on that this was a federal hate crime. We had heard the radio traffic with dispatch SWAT operators uttering comments that the defendant had made throughout, and the police were great about saying, he said all these Jews need to die, and several other comments. So we knew pretty early on it was going to be a federal hate crime investigation. And so we set up a command post and went from there. But I can tell you when I arrived on scene, it was absolutely chaotic. It was gut-wrenching. Pittsburgh is a hardworking town, sports-loving town, and in general, a pretty cohesive community. And for something like this to happen in Pittsburgh was just absolutely shocking. It was a, typical fall morning in Pittsburgh, kind of rainy, dreary morning. And all of a sudden, in a second, lives were forever shattered, forever changed. But we had a tremendous law enforcement response. And when I got there, I'll never forget seeing the brass, right? The top commanders of all the different police departments, local, state, federal, gathered around in front of the building talking about what are we going to do? How can we restore public safety as fast as possible? And how can we make this a full court press? And that's exactly what we did. The area had been cordoned off. We began the investigation, and it continued 24/7 for days, if not weeks.
So, granted, when you got there, it's in major disarray. You've got family members that are probably trying to get access to the crime scene.
Yes.
Your phone's blowing up.
Yes.
You've got a horrific crime scene to work at this point. Far more questions than answers. A multitude of agencies collaborating, which in the city of Pittsburgh, between the city of Pittsburgh, between Allegheny, between Pennsylvania State Police, the FBI, probably ATF, all these organizations historically work well together, train together.
Yes, absolutely.
They're accustomed to responding together. Nonetheless, and having been to crime scenes like that myself, that visual is something that doesn't leave you. So you're dealing with that visual, right, Shawn? You're dealing with that visual, but at the same time, you're not dealing with that visual because you know you have to get past that to get to do your job. Fair statement?
Fair statement.
Okay.
And at the time, it was chaotic because you're dealing with this impact to the community, the trauma, and then trying to answer to the community. And where are the victims going to go? Victims' family members, how can we talk to them? How can we provide them with information? We couldn't even share information on who the decedents were until much later that day. So if you can imagine, Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh is it's a small section of Pittsburgh, largely Jewish. Within a 2-mile square radius, we have no less than 10 synagogues, all of them having Saturday services, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and just the confusion that it caused in the community, lights, sirens. And I've talked to so many people who still, when lights and sirens go through Squirrel Hill, it brings them right back to that trauma. So certainly chaotic, absolutely.
Now, you've worked this case from its inception to after he was recently sentenced.
Yes.
How would you describe the subject?
So one of the first things we did when we found out who he was is, in the FBI, we have very good social media exploitation folks. So we said, hey, do a full exploitation on this individual, find everything you can. We need all the pieces of that puzzle. But also we have a behavioral analysis unit. And those folks also went to work because we needed a clear picture on who this person was. And I just want to back up because one of the most important things we had to ascertain within minutes was this a coordinated effort targeting the Jewish community, or was this a lone wolf? And we asked the defendant, are you acting alone? He responded, yes, but we're not going to take his word for it. So we had to make sure that he was acting alone. So by this time, by about 1 o'clock that afternoon, we knew he was acting individually. So we needed to get a very full, complete picture on him, his motivations, what was happening. And we also didn't know at that time, he had an apartment, he had a vehicle. Were there explosives located at any of those locations? So just so much work to be done. But in figuring out who he was, what we determined is this was very much a calculated, planned attack. For months, he had done tremendous preparation, tremendous planning, meticulous in his efforts. An example I have of that is he wore a timer during the attack. He knew when he had to get in and when he had to get out. And actually, that timer was recovered after he was arrested. But he had a Linux-based operating system. His computer was homemade. He built it himself. He had it set to self-destruct within 2 hours. So he knew exactly where he was going, exactly what he was doing. And if he didn't get out alive, he knew he was going to try and get rid of the evidence as best as possible.
Planned and calculated.
100%.
No question about it.
No question.
As a former supervisory special agent, you specialized in a lot of things. Phenomenal career. But you also worked hate crimes. And
Yes.
that requires a lot of training before you are even allowed to work those crimes. And the FBI, second to none, certainly at Quantico, but also in-service training outside of Quantico, to prepare you for that. Fair statement?
Fair statement. I had to go
Okay.
through several trainings. Yes.
Right. Two questions to that. What's the fuel that keeps this hate engine running? And is there anything we can do to mitigate that?
The hate engine running relative to anti-Semitism or in general?
In general.
In general. So, I attribute it to this. There is so much divisiveness now in our country, and social media has just exploited that. People no longer have civil discourse or conversations. We can't share our differences in a conversation in a respectful and polite way. It is far too easy to put a comment on social media that will incite people, and you walk away and you leave it there, and you don't think about the impact it will have on that protected class or that targeted group. And that's what's really hard. And that just has been fueling the fire that we see growing and just polarizing people. And it just shouldn't be the case. And I think it just continues to escalate. We see it every day, no matter what. And I'm not going to point out any social media platforms, but pick one, go on it, and you can see people make comments and they launch some sort of hate speech or vitriol, and they can walk away and stay behind their keyboard and never have to answer to it.
Right, exactly. Now, part two to that question, as it relates to your experience in working with hate crimes, why is anti-Semitism so prevalent?
That is a question we are continually asking. Anti-Semitism has been around for over 2,000 years. We have seen it, though, over the past, I'd say, easy 3 years. The trajectory of its growth has just been exponential. And I think it comes down to several things. With, again, the prevalence of social media, the conspiracy theories that are out there directed at the Jewish communities have taken on a lot of steam. COVID. There were so many conspiracy theories that the Jews were responsible for COVID. They control the media. They control the banking systems. These are just the rhetoric and the conspiracy theories that are out there. And people will put this out on social media. And for those who don't know that these are conspiracy theories, they buy into this. And it just fuels these white supremacy groups, these neo-Nazi groups who feel like they have a loss of control because the Jews are taking over. And so, it just continues to grow and expand.
If you could take the gloves off right now, all right, if Shawn gets whatever Shawn needs, okay, seriously.
Yeah.
It's a loaded question, but I'm throwing it at you.
Yeah.
You could take the gloves off right now to fight anti-Semitism in the United States.
Yeah.
What would you do?
So we're doing it. We have got a full court press right now. We have an organization that we work very closely with, in fact, every day. It's called Secure Community Network. It's a national nonprofit that provides security and guidance to Jewish federations across the country, even into Canada as well. And their security directors, just like myself, strategically located these Jewish federations. And in conjunction with a 24/7 operating center based in Chicago, we are scouring social media. We are looking for the next active shooter, the next threat actor. And we're working so closely with law enforcement to be proactive. And honestly, I think, we can't control the narrative on anti-Semitism, but we can control how proactive we are. And we have this tremendous network of retired law enforcement across the country, just like myself, who band together and collectively address these things. And we're out there making presentations, we're teaching, we're training, we're bringing awareness to it. But we're also looking at social media, and we're doing deep dives. We're not bound by, law enforcement needs a predication to open investigation. We do not. I can get on anybody's social media page and go through it. I don't need a predicated event to look into somebody. We don't have that. We're able to do deep dives, scour social media, take what we find, report it to law enforcement, and then they can open an investigation. So I think it's a great system that we have in place, and this has really empowered us to be on the front lines of this fight.
That's phenomenal. Now, that kind of leads into, at this point of our show, we normally take questions from the audience, which we had said that you were going to be joining, and we had a question, someone that wrote in. So if I can, I want to switch to that and ask you a quick question. Alan from Virginia wrote in and said that, Alan's question is that, as an avid viewer, I'm glad to hear that you're covering this. I'll bet I don't know how much good it's going to do. My question is for your guest. If we do see hate crimes in our community, what could we do about it?
I love that question, because that's where it starts, right? With members of our own community, no matter race, religion, ethnicity.
This is a guy who knew you were coming on, and he's asking you. So you got the floor.
So report it. There are Jewish federations located across the country. Report it to the Jewish Federation in your particular area. They have what's called an incident report form. They literally take 15 seconds to fill out. Report it to law enforcement, whether it's local, state, or federal. But we cannot connect the dots until we collect the dots. And I stole that from a doctor that I work with closely here in Pittsburgh on our threat assessment team. But I love it because really it boils down to community members and good citizens to report these things. Just like you said regarding the defendant in the Tree of Life building attack. Where were those people who knew something was not right, right? He was off. Everybody knew it. It takes somebody reporting that and then somebody else. Eventually, we can connect those dots and we're able to do something proactively instead of reacting.
Couldn't have asked for a better answer to that. Shawn, as we close out for today, would you be able to share any information that we can put in our library at factbasednews.com where people can go, if they have a question, know how to contact you and seek your assistance? Maybe you don't have time to respond to it, maybe one of your colleagues does, but as an alternative.
Yes. So you can locate me via you're welcome to email me, sbrokos@jfedpgh.org. You can go to our website, and also Secure Community Network. If anybody Googles that, they also have an incident reporting form. So for the folks who are not located in the greater Pittsburgh area, you can go to Secure Community Network and file an incident report form. You can do it through me at Pittsburgh. I'll make sure it gets to where it needs to go. But I think that's the best thing to do.
That is. And Shawn, if you would share that information with us, we'll make sure that we put it up on the website so that people across the country that are watching this, that that can be another step. And please know that we will be a resource for you. As the media, we will be a resource for you to get this message out and to refer people out. So on behalf of everybody here, please know how deeply grateful we are for everything you are doing, for taking the time to join us today, for sharing what you were able to share with us, because I know that it's life-changing for the people that watch. So thank you very much.
I can't thank you enough, Paul. Thanks for having me.
All right, Shawn. And listen, at this point, we're going to switch to the board, and we're going to close out by far one of the most important subjects that we have covered in our season 1. And I'm going to start with number 1 on the board for today, and that is remember the definition of hate crime and how to report it. I just finished with Shawn on that part too, but remember the definition. You have so much to do with this. Remember the information that we shared in the beginning of the show about the plethora of people that knew about Bowers before this happened. Number two, anti-Semitic crimes are more than 51% of religion-based hate crime. Don't forget that. You know, in the second episode of this season, we covered the horrible incident that took place in Memphis. Don't forget that. This young man that died screaming, "Mom," about 100 feet away from his mother's door where he was beaten by 4 cops. We've covered hate before. We'll cover it again. But remember this one, 51% of religion-based crimes is anti-Semitic. Can't make that up. Number 3, Bowers' inability to control himself had been displayed since the 4th grade. 4th grade. 4, teachers, mental health professionals, co-workers, neighbors were all witnesses to his red flags of violence. Fact. 5, he boasted about his hate for Jews and intentions of violence on social media. Of all the incredibly powerful things that Shawn shared with us, boy, did she hit the cover off the ball when she talked about social media. Look, God rest her soul, my mother used to say, in Greek there's a saying, "Ban metriston ariston," which means everything in moderation. I'm not saying do away with social media, but I'm saying it has to be responsible. And it can't be a place for electronic cowards to hide. And it can't be a place for our law enforcement to get handcuffed to be able to patrol. It can't be, if we're going to continue to fight this and all the other things that permeate through on social media. And 6, know the signs. Get involved and preemptively report to law enforcement. Now, you can always, and you will see on your screen, reporting a hate crime. It's up there right now. There's information about who you can call, the steps, the phone numbers, email addresses, websites. There's no excuse. You are not incurring a risk by reporting it. Do not think that anything's going to be thrown away. Law enforcement wants to hear it. You can go to your local police department. You can go to the FBI. And now we've got Shawn as a resource, so you can go to our website at factbasednews.com and look up the information that's going to be there from Shawn. And you couldn't have a better advocate. So as we close out for today, we're closing out the first season. And I will close that on this note. We've covered a lot of things here. And we intentionally chose the most controversial subjects our country's facing. Why? Because all of us here at Fact-Based News wanted to make sure you had the facts. And you have. And today, on one of the most horrific events in the history of our country, hopefully we'll reflect on the foreseeability of that and what we as a national community can do to prevent it. I'm Paul Viollis, and this is Fact-Based News.